Welcome to Coach Bennett's podcast, where every run has a purpose, where kindness is hardcore, where this is about running, and this is not about running, where every starting line is a finish line in disguise, where rambling still gets you where you need to be, where pineapple will never ruin your pizza, and the sodas, adult and not adult kind, are always cold, and where there is room on the starting line for everybody. I'm Coach Bennett. Thank you for letting me be a part of your day. Let's get started.
Welcome to episode 1999. Actually, it's not 1999, although it would be cool at some point to get to episode 1999. I mean, that's nuts. If somebody out there wants to do the math and figure out what year it would be to get to episode 1999, if we did one episode a week, and let's throw in like 3 or 4 extra episodes a year, how long would it take for us to get to episode 1999? And listen, if we want to go crazy, let's pretend, oh my gosh, how funny is that? And I did not plan that. Let me just tell you, I went with 1999, singing a little bit of Prince's song, obviously 1999, from his album that came out in 1982, oddly enough, but was actually inspired by him watching a documentary on Nostradamus, which, then led to him thinking like, all right, well, let's write a song about, the end of the world. And I'll tell you what, end of the world sounds really good if you listen to 1999. But the point is, I just said, let's go crazy. And that's another Prince song, not from his album 1999, which also had the song 1999 and Little Red Corvette and Delirious and a couple other ones. But Let's Go Crazy was actually on Purple Rain. Anyway, the point here is, I don't even know what the point was. It's episode 99. Oh, the point was, if someone wants to come back to me and let me know what year it would be for us to have an episode 1999, assuming there's 55 to 60 episodes a year going forward of Coach Bennett's podcast, then let me know and we can plan accordingly, I guess. But this is episode 99. And let me just tell you, if you're a music fan and you haven't listened to 1999, you're nuts. You need to listen to that. I mean, Prince is just, it's incredible. And those were like his 2 biggest hits at the time, 1999 and Little Red Corvette. Delirious was a hit, but I think Little Red Corvette, actually, out of all of them, was the highest charting single he had up until that point. And then it was soon thereafter that he came out with Purple Rain, which is, one of the greatest albums of all time. But this is episode 99. So let's get into it. Oh, and by the way, no, we're going to keep it actually on the music thing, because this was not going to be the topic today. I mean, I think that the name of the episode is going to be You Gotta Have Faith. It may just be Faith. I'm not sure. But obviously I'm playing with George Michael's song, Faith, which, oddly enough, was inspired by Prince and some of the techniques he had with how he was singing and how his voice came across. But obviously Faith was one of the big singles off George Michael's album, which, a lot of people don't understand. George Michael's like a complete stud. He wrote, produced, and obviously sang Faith. Like, that was all him. Like, he was just amazing, and what an incredible voice. And Faith is such a good song. Such a good song. That album, woof. I think I was in 7th grade, maybe 8th grade. I mean, 5, 6, maybe 7 different songs on there were just all-time greats. This episode is not about Prince. It's not about George Michael, although I'll tell you what, those would be great episodes if I just talked to you about Prince and George Michael. But it's actually about Faith Kipyagan, who, if you've been paying attention, and maybe you haven't, and that's okay, she's going after the sub 4-minute mile this summer. That's right. Faith Kipyagan, late June, in Paris, is going to attempt to break 4 minutes in the mile. Yeah, breaking 4. That's what it's called. Now, if you're a geek, if you're a nerd, if you're someone who loves running and you've been passionate about it, and guess what? Maybe you don't know about this and all of those other things are true, but guess what? I'm going to lead you into this whole other world that you should be excited about. Back in 2016, it was announced that there was going to be an attempt at 2 hours in the marathon. So Nike put together this thing called Breaking 2, and it involved some of the best marathoners in the world, 3 specifically. It was Lisa DeCisa, Eliud Kipchoge, which most people would say is the GOAT, the greatest marathoner of all time. And if you're not saying that he's the greatest marathoner of all time, then, well, you're wrong. And then Zersine Tadese. And I think I'm pronouncing the names correctly. If I'm not, please correct me, because I would rather pronounce them the right way. But these athletes committed to make an attempt at breaking 2 hours in the marathon, which had never been done. In fact, the world record at the time when they announced this was just under 2 hours and 3 minutes. That's 180 seconds, basically, faster than the world record. Now, this was going to be set up in a way that was not how most marathons were. There were going to be pacers, rabbits, that were going to come in and out of this. It was going to be on a specific type of course. It would be conducive to doing it. The point was to break a barrier. That was the point. Whether it was going to be recognized as an actual world record, well, this was hopefully going to tear apart our preconceived notions of what was possible, and that would then lead to people taking on a sub-2 attempt in a classic marathon situation. So this was, a really big deal when it was announced back in 2016, and I'm just going to give you a little background here to why I'm so excited about what Faith Kipyegon is taking on, and it has to do with my lack of faith in Breaking 2, because I remember being at work when I was told that Nike was going to go after this idea of Breaking 2 and supporting a bunch of runners through a lot of different ways in their attempt to potentially break 2 in the marathon. And I remember thinking to myself, this is a terrible idea, because they're just going to fail, because nobody can break 2 in the marathon. I mean, remember, the marathon record was like just under 2:03. I think it was like 2:02:57 was the world record at the time. To put out there that through better training and better shoes and nutrition and pacing, that you're going to be able to knock 2 minutes and 57 seconds off the best marathon, or I should say, off the fastest marathon ever run. It's just ridiculous. And I remember thinking, like, this is just dumb. This is a dumb idea, because they're going to fail. And I was lucky enough to get to be in Monza in Italy at the track that's often used for F1 races to watch this take place. It was May of 2017, I believe. And I was there, and I remember it was very exciting, and it was fun, and I still didn't think it was going to happen. And I remember I was watching it, and someone came up to me and said, "What do you think? Do you think they're going to get it?" And I said, I don't know. I mean, he's still got 7 miles to go. And at this point, it looked like Kipchoge was definitely the strongest of the 3. He was probably the only one that was going to even have a real shot at breaking it. And I thought, 7 miles is a long way. And the person I was standing with, I don't know who they were. I don't know their names. I think this might have been the first time I met them. They came up to me, but they said something that was just completely shocking to me, because it was true, and I just hadn't thought of it. And they said, "Yeah, but that's like half an hour." And I thought, oh my goodness, they're right. He just has to keep it together for 30 minutes, which, keep in mind, is a long way, but it's not 2 hours. It's 30 minutes, and he looked great. And I thought, I'm putting my preconceived notions about whether it's possible on this attempt as opposed to Eliud's preconceived notions about whether it's possible. And it was really a slap in the face for me, because I had kind of prided myself as an athlete and as a coach of being someone that believed in the impossible, that thought there was always the chance for the impossible to become possible. Because, well, one, I was a history dork, and I was also a runner, and the impossible is always impossible until it's been made possible by somebody doing it. And that has consistently happened time and time again. I think that's one of the reasons why I love the sport. It's one of the reasons why I loved coaching. And for whatever reason, I guess I just got into a rut, and I just thought, no, this is only impossible, as opposed to it's possible. And at that moment, I started cheering a lot louder, and I started really paying attention a lot more, because I thought, I'm watching the impossible become impossible. Now, if you remember what happened, Kipchoge ended up running 2 hours and 25 seconds. So by less than 1 second per mile, he missed breaking 2. He was right there. He was right there. And it was such a wonderful reminder of something I already knew and had forgotten, that the impossible is possible. And just because it hasn't happened yet doesn't change that fact. So when I heard that Faith Kipyegon had agreed to this idea, this outlandish idea of trying to break 4 minutes, which, by most measurements, people would say is at least a generation away. At least a generation away, unless someone decides, no, the time is now. We're going to do it. Or we're going to at least try to do it. We're going to say, yes, it's impossible, but we might be able to achieve the impossible. That is so invigorating, inspiring. And here's the thing, Faith is a 4:07 miler. She's the world record holder in the miler. No one has ever run a mile as fast as she has. 4:07 in Monaco back in 2023. So it'll be 2 years since she set the world record in the mile. That's 7 seconds. That is, here's the thing. I've been talking about the marathon. We're talking about the marathon was 2:02:57 and 2 minutes and 57 seconds. That's so much. Listen, 7 seconds in the mile is massive. It's gigantic. If you've run 4:07, to say I'm going to break 4 takes a kind of a monumental, pun intended, leap of faith, which she has. But here's the thing. This is what I'm so excited about, and this is what I love, and I'm so happy that I got to go through breaking 2, and I got to watch it, and I got to have that, metaphorical slap in the face when it comes to what I believe in and what I think is possible. I'm just so inspired by the guts it takes for someone to say, I'm going to try to do something that I probably can't do. And the important part is probably, okay? Because really, if you're putting down some bets, Faith shouldn't be able to break 4. And I'll tell you why. No one's broken 4. No one. And it's not like this is new. All of the greatest female runners have tried to do it. No one's done it until someone will do it. And Faith is saying, I'm going to try to do it. Now, she could do this under the radar. She could set up some pacing and some rabbits to go out there, and this could be, again, at a big meet in Paris or Europe or anywhere, and try to go after this and not tell anybody. And, the announcers would say, wow, this is a really hot pace. No one's been running this fast. But it's not out there for the world to see that you're trying to do something no one's done before. Not only that, you're trying to do something that probably no one's dreamed about doing before. But I'll tell you what is so damn exciting is that after this, you are going to have women and girls dreaming about breaking 4. If Faith does it, they're going to be dreaming about doing it too. If she doesn't do it, you're going to have athletes dreaming about being the first to do it. And I'll tell you what, that's what's so powerful. As a coach, as a runner, as a fan, that's what I'm excited about. The fact that this ripple effect that will come from this, that somebody had the courage, the guts to stand up and say, I'm going to try to do it. Now, it's going to be a stretch to do it. Most would say it's impossible. Nobody can do it. But then again, it was impossible not that long ago for a man to break 4 minutes. These are the same discussions that were happening around track and field when people thought, no, it's just you're getting to the limits of what a human can do when you're saying someone's going to break 4 minutes for the mile. And then you know what happened? No one did it in all of history. And then somebody did it in 1954. And within a few months, a couple other people did it. So something that was impossible suddenly became very possible. Oddly enough, at the end of this week here in Oregon, there's going to be a high school invitational. We're in that high school invitational. You're going to have 3 different high school boys that have broken 4 minutes in high school. So just think about the monumental shifts that occurred from one person saying the impossible is now possible. And there is a lesson here. Obviously, there's a lesson here for all of us. And that is we need to stop diminishing our capabilities. We need to stop limiting our dreams. And guess what? We need to not be afraid to fail. Because that's really what this comes down to. We limit what we try to do based on our fear of failure. I've had so many athletes that I've gotten to meet, and this is kind of the crazy thing, and just bear with me here for a second. The athletes that I respect the most are not always the ones that have accomplished the most. But I will say this, the athletes that I've found that have accomplished the most have also set themselves up for the most amount of failure. And that's what interests me. Those athletes that say, I'm going to do this. And we kind of take it for granted because when they do it, we think, well, yeah, they're great. They should accomplish this. No. What we fail to realize is, nobody should be able to accomplish these things. That's why so few people accomplish these things. When that person does accomplish that thing, it makes it no less extraordinary because they did it. We sometimes put all of this, advantages that these people have. I hear it about Michael Phelps. How big his hands are, or his feet are, or how long his torso is and all this stuff. And it's you do realize the amount of work he needed to do, the commitment he needed to do, the amount of, focus, discipline, perseverance he needed to have to accomplish what he did. Eliud Kipchoge was a great 5K runner. And by great, I mean one of the best 5K runners in the world. The reason why he ended up in the marathon was because he thought he couldn't be the best 5K runner in the world. It was him thinking, I'm not enough. That's why I'm going to move up. And he became the greatest male marathoner of all time. It didn't come from him thinking, I'm going to be the best marathoner in the world. It came from him thinking, I'm not good enough to compete in the 5K going forward. That's where it came from. We always think these people are like, well, if I shoot it, I'm going to make it. No, what they're thinking is, if I shoot this, I'm going to make it. And if I don't, I'm going to keep shooting. It doesn't define me if I miss it. That's what is so empowering when we allow ourselves to be excited, motivated, and inspired by these athletes. And I used to think this way. And I used to take advantage of these athletes that used to do these wild things. I remember being on a bus with a group of freshmen and sophomores, and I might have told this story before, but I'm telling it again. And this was right after the Boston Marathon. And I remember Ryan Hall had run 2:04 something in the Boston Marathon, which worked out to, 4:46 or 4:45s or 4:44 miles, I forget, for 26.2 miles. And I'm driving on a bus with a whole bunch of these young kids, and I bring them up to the front of the bus, and I say, listen, if we can get 10 of you to rabbit Ryan Hall for 2 miles of his marathon. Now keep in mind, he's got to run 26 miles, 26.2 miles. But if we can rabbit him, if we can over the next 2 years get you freshmen and sophomores, which by that time will be juniors and seniors, which means you're 14 and 15, and at that point you'll be 16, 17. If we can get you to rabbit him, pace him through the first 2 miles of a marathon, he has to continue for 24 more miles, but you can drop out after 2. If you can get to a fitness level to be able to help him, pace him, rabbit him for 2 miles, 10 of you, then we're going to be the best team in the United States in cross country. We'll be the best team in the country. If we can get 15 of you to do that, we'll be the greatest team of all time. And I broke it down in that way, it was such a great way to humanize, one, how extraordinary the effort was that Ryan Hall just put in the marathon, and at the same time, humanize what we're asking them to do, which is you don't have to run 26.2 miles at that pace. You don't have to run 20 miles at that pace, or 15, or 10, or 8, or 7, or 5, or 4, or 3. 2. Do 2 at that pace. And guess what? We will be extraordinary. So the cool thing is that when someone does something that raises the bar, all right, they're raising the bar for everyone. And I think sometimes we look at the elites, the professionals, and we think, I have nothing in common with them. You have everything in common with them. If you're trying to be better, if you're trying to be your best, then you have something in common with the best. And when they raise the roof, they're not raising it just for the elites. They're raising it for everyone, which means we all have more room to grow. Our ceilings have all increased in altitude. That's what is so exciting, invigorating, empowering about these moments. You know, I remember we were at dinner. This was maybe, 15 years ago, I would guess. And it was my family. So I've got 3 kids with Coach Bennett the grader. That's Tammy. And our son Jack was folding paper. And, you know, you can only fold paper a certain amount of times. I forget what number it is. But he had gotten to a point where I felt like you can't fold it anymore. And he was working at it. And I told him, I said, like, you can't keep folding the paper. It's done. And he looked at me and I said, no, it's like, I'm not saying you personally can't do it. I'm saying it's impossible. And about 30 seconds later, he, holds up the paper and says, it's impossible, but I just did it. And I remember just being floored. Same thing. Tammy looked at me. We both looked at each other and we're like, this is one of those moments where the student becomes the teacher. It's impossible, but I just did it. And it was something that I'll always keep. And it's something that I thought, again, standing there on the sidelines in Monza as I watched Eliud Kipchoge try to break 2 hours in the marathon. And, if you're a nerd or a geek, you know that it wasn't that long after there was another situation put on with a number of rabbits where he went out and he ran under 2 hours for the marathon. Yeah, it was impossible, but he did it. And the cool thing to remember here, I think it's cool because I like flipping the script on some of these things, is that, great goals should always be unattainable when you set them. Like, to me, that's the sign of a great goal. Like, okay, what do you want to try to do? All right, I want to try to do X. Can you do X right now? No. Okay, we've got something here. Like, which means it's impossible. Right now, it's impossible. You're setting a goal because you believe you will do what it takes to make the impossible possible, which also means you're courting failure, which takes courage. It takes guts. It takes a significant amount of confidence in yourself and your achievements and what you've already accomplished to say, I'm going to try to do something I've never been able to successfully do before. And I mean, you could say, well, I've never tried to break 4 minutes in the mile. But if you've run a mile and you haven't broken 4 minutes, then I guess you failed to break 4 minutes. You tried your best and you ran 11:14, 9:13, 8:16, whatever. Me, for instance, I spent a good, substantial part of my life trying to break 4 minutes in the mile. I set that goal when I had no shot at breaking 4 minutes in the mile. I was very young. I knew it was going to take years for me to build up the strength, the endurance to be able to attempt to break 4 minutes in the mile. And then when I built up the endurance and the strength to break 4 minutes in the mile, I still didn't do it for a host of different reasons. I got close. I got really close, but I always failed in the attempt to break 4 minutes. But that goal, being something that was so far out there, took me so far, and I achieved so many goals along the way. Goals that I may not have been able to have achieved if I had set different goals. If I had said, I want to break 4:05 in the mile, well, I might have broken 4:05 in the mile, but I wouldn't have run as fast as I did, because I had set a goal that was beyond that. So yes, maybe I was setting myself up for failure, but in doing so, committing and recommitting to that goal brought me so much more success, as long as I was willing to acknowledge that success, which again is where confidence comes from. It's the acknowledgement of your achievements and accomplishments. That's where confidence comes from. It's not the achieving and the accomplishing. It's the acknowledging what you've accomplished and achieved. Remember that. That's where the confidence comes from, which is why I think the people that accomplish and achieve the most, they are the most confident, because they realize that along the way, there will be failures that some people with less confidence will not acknowledge as achievements and accomplishments. On your way to trying to do this, what else have you accomplished? Someone like Faith Kipyegon, who's a 4:07 world record holder in the mile, trying to break 4 minutes in the mile. The reason why she's going to get close is because she understands that 4:07 was a victory. 4:06 is a victory. 4:05, 4:04, 4:03, 4:02, 4:01, 4.00. Those are all victories. Are they sub 4? No. Are they chiseling and breaking down the barrier that is 4 flat? Yes. So if you have a great goal, an extraordinary goal, a goal that is unattainable right now, are you aware of all of the successes, the victories that you are accomplishing and achieving on your way towards that goal? I hope so, because without that, you will not have the confidence you need to attain and achieve and accomplish that goal. So, am I fired up about Faith Kipyegon taking on the 4-minute mile? Oh, yes. You gotta have faith. And that's important on every single starting line. Faith and hope, baby. So that's the episode. And I know it was out of left field because guess what? It was announced today and I got super fired up, and I will be giving you updates about this because it's going to be awesome. And we should celebrate the attempt. Whatever happens in June, whatever happens in late June in Paris, we can celebrate that too. But most importantly to me is that somebody said, yeah, it's impossible, and I'm going to try to do it. Oof, let's go. So that's episode 99. And yes, there'll be links in the show notes to Prince and George Michael. Of course there is. But I want you to know, thank you so much for listening to the show. The show's been doing great in 2025. Thank you for rating it. If you haven't rated it, please rate it. If you haven't reviewed it, please review it. If you love this episode, please send in a review. Tell me that. And subscribe and share the show with friends, family, and teammates. I really appreciate it. And maybe we'll be able to get Faith on the show. How cool would that be? Yeah. How cool would that be leading up to it? So I'm going to throw that out there into the world, and hopefully it'll happen. It'll manifest itself. So that's what I'm throwing it out there. So thank you for listening. Thanks for being a part of this community. Take care of yourself. Take care of each other. And I'll meet you on the next starting line. Thank you so much for listening to Coach Bennett's podcast today. And if you haven't already subscribed or set yourself as a follower to the podcast, I really hope you would. And make sure you check out the show notes, because in those show notes, you're going to find a link to Coach Bennett's newsletter and all the social media sites I'm on, like Instagram and Threads and Cameo and Blue Sky and nope, not on that one anymore. So all the ones I am on, you're going to find it in the show notes, so check that out as well. And as always, thank you again for listening to Coach Bennett's podcast. Until next time, you keep taking care of yourself and each other.